Welcome to Lacrosse Classified on the Lax All-Stars Podcast Network, presented by Extreme Threads. Your home for the latest news from the National Lacrosse League and indoor lacrosse. Now, let's talk some lacrosse with your hosts, Jake Elliott and Evan Schemenauer.
All right, lacrosse fans, welcome back to Extreme Threads Lacrosse Classified right here on the Lax All-Stars Podcast Network. Man, oh man, what a week of lacrosse we just saw in the National Lacrosse League in week number 15. Week number 16 is upon us in mere days. We're going to talk about it all right here on Lacrosse Classified. Myself, Jake Elliott, thanks for joining us. And I'll bring my partner in right off the top here. Evan Schemenauer back on the podcast. Welcome back, Evan.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me expand my lead once again. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, well, the proverbial coin let me down a couple of times. I did get a couple of picks right that you got wrong, but really it was Toronto that kind of let me down this weekend. Tough weekend. I thought things would go differently for the Rock, but both Georgia and Buffalo coming out on top. We're going to talk about it here in Stampede Tax, who we had momentarily. First things first here, man. We've been chatting a little bit, have we and some others in our NLL chat group. Anyways, this new video that has gone viral here, Evan. It's been picked up by ESPN and Yahoo and TSN and Bleacher Report and whoever else, which is great. Maybe just give me your general thoughts on it before I share mine. How about that? You know the one I'm talking about here, the one with the high school. Let me just lay it out here for you, Evan. The high school game that clearly, one team is better than the other by a wide margin. And just for a little bit of context here for the people, the game, I believe, at this time is 21-6 for the team that pulls this off. And it's a cool video. I'll grant you that. My original, I'm going to let you speak here, Evan. But anyways, 3 behind the back passes and a behind the back shot for a goal at the high school level in a game that was a blowout against a team that was clearly overmatched. Your general thoughts on the video, Evan?
Tough one for me. I can look at it in both lenses, and I know a lot of people were let the kids be kids, or any publicity for lacrosse is great, which has an element of truth to it. I don't deny that. And the truth of the matter is, are you going to try 4 behind-the-back passes when you're in a 10-7 game? No, right? I mean, this was something where the situation dictated it. The other side of me looks at it as like, okay, if this was 10 years ago, that would have been a line brawl. Mm-hmm. And there's a very thin line between making something look spectacular and showing up your opponent. And I don't fault people for reacting either way to it. I think maybe it was a little over the top, but anytime you can sell the game, you know what? Do it.
Okay. For me, if you think that by watching somebody stumbling across this video going, oh man, look at that. How cool is that? I'm going to sign my kid up and play lacrosse, and I'm going to start going to PLL games or NLL games or WLAL games because I just saw that video. I think you're dreaming. And for me, the part of it that kind of gets me is that why is that the video that goes viral? What is it about that video that makes people go, holy, look at that. Let's share that with the world. When I could literally pull up 40 goals from NCAA or the NLL or whatever lacrosse that were way better than that. And to me, the problem that I have with it, first of all, I can get down with the 2 first behind the back passes, like off the face-off guy, and then the one from the point down to the crease. It's the third one that is completely unnecessary, and the shot that is even more ridiculous to attempt. And what bothers me about this more than anything is that it was orchestrated. It was clearly staged. If you watch the one defender, he's so overmatched, he's chasing the ball around like a lost puppy. So clearly the team has not been coached properly, and these guys are way overmatched, and this high school team, whoever it is, I don't even really care who it is, decided to get together before the face-off and said, hey boys, we're up 21-6 here. Let's try this and do this next time and make this team look stupid. It's a high school lacrosse game, and one team didn't even really belong on the field with the other because they were so overmatched. And then you want to disrespect them and the sport by pulling this crap off? Like, if that's the kind of video that you need to see to enjoy lacrosse, then keep moving, because there's way better stuff out there. And I can't understand why it's this that attracts people, or even the guy that, broke the kid's ankles and then waves at him before he went to goal. Like, man, you're right. 10 years ago, I'm taking my stick and probably clocking the guy in the head and saying, don't do that again, because that's just stupid. And I just can't understand why people are attracted to a video like that that's clearly orchestrated and disrespecting a team that's clearly overmatched.
Wow.
Just to attract eyes to the sport. That's not the way I want attention on lacrosse.
No, but I mean, in this day and age with social media, what goes viral and what doesn't could be the tiniest thing, and you never know which one is going to go which way. It's one of those things that over time you learn just what works and what doesn't. If it's my team, I'm coaching high school.
Those players are getting benched.
Huge lead, but I'm working on some play or some aspect of the game we want to work on a little bit. Running a longer possession just so we don't embarrass them too much. That's me, but I get it. Kids
I don't get
have fun too.
I don't get it.
But
you want to have fun? Go do that at the lacrosse box. Do that during practice. Do that, when you're having fun out on a Sunday afternoon playing with your buddies. Doing it in a game that's a blowout game. Like, if I'm the coach of that, I don't know if the coach was a part of it or not, but if my players did that in that situation right there, they're getting benched for, the next half of the next game for being completely disrespectful to the other team and the sport of lacrosse. That's not what it's about. And I may have the unpopular opinion. I may be in the minority. I may be old school when it comes to that. But to me, celebrating that video, going, look at how cool this is, that was a complete joke. And it's a trash video, in my opinion. So there you go. That's my opinion on it. I'm glad you got yours out there as well. And I don't really care if I'm in the minority and have an unpopular opinion when it comes to that. I thought it was really disrespectful and stupid, quite frankly. Teach the fundamentals, teach respecting the game and respecting your opponent, and move along. Okay, Evan, 7 games in Week 15, a monster week in the National Lacrosse League. I think that's the high water mark for games in a single week at 7. So we got to run this down. We got a big show coming up. You didn't remind me again, but we got a big show coming up. Coming up first, to decide we're going to flip our guests around here. We're going to get to the man that tends goal for the Colorado Mammoth, one of them anyways. Dylan Ward would be the other one, but we're going to have Steve Deep Fryer coming on the podcast here today. Can't wait to talk to Deep Sea. So he will join us here in about 10 to 15 minutes time. And then I think we may be running long here today, Evan. Quite frankly, I'm running a little hot today after that discussion on Twitter. It's been a little while since I've had some beef on the old Twitterverse. So it's got me a little fired up. And I think we're going to have a long extended conversation here, because there's a lot of questions that I want answered, as I'm sure you do, as I'm sure a lot of fans do.
More than a few, yeah.
So, General Counsel for the Professional Lacrosse Players Association, Jason Jaros, will join us here coming up in about half an hour's time. So, clear your schedule up here for the next hour and a half or so, because I think we're going to run a little long with Mr. Jaros coming up here shortly. After we talk to Steve Fryer, after we talk about the 7 games that just happened in the National Lacrosse League here on Stampede Tax, who we had, your complete source for boots, hats, belts, jeans, in anything country. They ship Canada-wide. They're located in Cloverdale since 1967. Find them online at stampede.ca, where shopping online is still shopping local. And I should probably start going through the catalog a little bit, Evan. Maybe pick out my favorite hat, my belt buckle, and maybe some spurs to go on my boots, because I'm slipping behind a little bit more as we move along here. Before we get started, just give me the updated standings, the overall standings here. Go ahead.
Well, I'm glad a few people actually showed up and started to give us the pictures what you're going to look like. And we got a nice prize to hand out.
Should we do that now? Let's do that now.
Let's do that now. We had a few entries there. Brad Challoner actually had a very nice one. You looking like Garth Brooks. Very simple.
He was the front runner. He was the front runner for a little bit.
He was the front runner, but then he got beat at the end by David Salisbury from Melfort, Saskatchewan.
How about that?
Who had you looking like a Mexican cowboy there.
Yeah, the old good, the bad, and the ugly. Clint Eastwood kind of a get up there. So if you want to see that, it's on my timeline. You can find that. David Salisbury, congratulations! You have won the prize pack from Stampede Tack, Blundstone merchandise coming your way. We'll be in touch. We'll figure out how to get that to you. And congratulations.
And speaking of which, I still haven't even updated the standings.
Oh yeah. Okay, here we go.
So I went 4-3, which is actually a poor week for me, but I'm 50-24 overall. You went 3-4. It came down to the final game to see who would gain ground this week, and you couldn't pull it off.
No.
So you're 45-29. You're 5 games back, and we got, 5 weeks remaining?
Yeah, the hole got a little deeper. I may change up my strategy this week. I know I'm going to be hosting who you got coming up later, so I'm going to give that some thought here on what I'm going to do. I might just pick all home teams or all road teams this week, or I might go with all coin picks or just all my own picks. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but we'll figure it out. But let's go through these quickly here because we got to get to my man Deep. 7 big ones on the docket. First up was Toronto at Georgia. Having this game, 14-5 the final for the Swarm. This just wasn't close.
And what a performance by Mike Poulin. The guy was on a different planet that night, just making stop after stop. Because Toronto was getting shots, just not maybe the best quality shots, but he was stopping everything left, right, and center. No Adam Jones. I don't know what the story is there. Now, it's not unusual he's missing a Friday night on the road because he's teaching. But the left side was just absolutely atrocious. It's tough to say what's going to happen going forward. The Stotts 5-5. The Thompsons both having massive assist nights. One thing I'm really happy about is that they announced 79 attendance, but it actually looked like it was about 3,500. It was better than normal for Georgia, so that's a good sign. But the other thing now is Georgia's 2 games up on Toronto for second place and have the season series. So that pretty much now starts to lock in a home playoff game for Georgia at the bare minimum.
Yeah, that was a big win there for the Swarm. I think Toronto actually outshot Georgia that game, and you're right. Adam Jones has been conspicuously missing from the Rock lineup for the better part of a month now, and we're still really not sure what's going on with Adam Jones because he didn't play on the Saturday night against the Buffalo Bandits either, which we will get to here momentarily. But another Friday night game. There was 3 Friday night games last week, and Colorado at Vancouver. I was at this game, Evan. And it started off quite well for the Vancouver Warriors. They scored on their first 3 shots, but a backdoor crease violation that really had nothing to do with the goal wiped out that third goal on the third shot. And it was a shaky start for Dylan Ward, but man, oh man, did Wardo ever settle down into that game because he only allowed 5 the rest of the way. As the Mammoth pull away in this one, they win it 11-7 in a game that featured another over-the-shoulder beauty from Kyle Killen.
And, of course, we've got to talk about the flourishing offense. We've been grinding Teddy Jenner about this. He talked about the flourishing Mammoth offense on the Flash last week, and we're trying to get him to say it on the air with no luck, unfortunately. yeah, game of the year for Dylan Ward. I was actually a little surprised because after that one, I was like, how can they not start Ward? But, hey, props to them. They went to Fryer in the second game.
Don't give it all away, Evan. Don't give it all away.
But, the other thing I take from this, Ryan Lee was 4-3, and I think back to this past July where not only was he not protected in the expansion draft, but he wasn't selected. And, boy, was that a big miss on that part. Kid's absolutely phenomenal.
Yep, he's having a year, no doubt about it. Let's move along here. Saskatchewan at San Diego, and might have been the game of the week here. This one was a heck of a lacrosse game here between the Rush and the Seals. Saskatchewan trailing the most of the way and had a couple of breakaways in the late going, had a crossbar from Benny Mack kind of near the buzzer. Can't get to level terms. San Diego first place in the West, and they extend their lead with a 13-12 victory and even up the season series against Saskatchewan now with 13-12 victory down at Pechanga Arena. What a game.
Yeah, and the Rush have lost two massively close games. Although, in my mind, they had their heads in the game for parts of the game, but not the whole time. And that's not their normal 60 minutes of concentration that you see out of them. Adam Schutz heard all kinds of mixed reactions about it. Yeah, he let in a few softies, but he also made some massive stops when they needed him, especially down the stretch. It would have been nice to have Evan Kirk back in the lineup, sure, but he's not doing that bad of a job.
Well, to me, Evan, it's Adam Schutz has shown the ability that he can be a goalie in this league, no question about it. But you want to see Adam Schutz make all the saves that he should make, and then make some spectacular saves on top of that. Unfortunately, right now for Adam Schutz, he's making spectacular saves, and he's making most of the ones that he should stop. Yeah. But it's the ones that are coming from goal line extended, late in shot clocks from well out, where maybe he's lacking a little bit of focus and concentration. And those ones always, they feel like two goals are going in against you. You're like just paddling upstream when your goaltender's letting in soft goals. So that's something that Adam Schutz is going to need to clean up moving forward here. You just can't afford to let in softies like that.
The other thing to take from this game, Garrett Billings is on a whole new level right now. It was only one goal, but 9 assists, and those 9 assists, if you look back on them, it was really the assist that was the goal, because he's finding somebody wide open that's not even in the peripheral vision of anybody else. Yeah. And he's just playing on another planet right now. Good on him for a guy that's been away from the game for a while.
Well, he did take a year off to become a firefighter, but he was kind of on his way out the door with Jamie Batley and Doug Locker. Couldn't make that team there in Vancouver under Jamie Batley, and he wasn't getting in the lineup. And man, you look back on that and just go like, what? He steps back, and it maybe took him 1 or 2 games to kind of find his rhythm, and since then he's just been firing on all cylinders, looking like the old Garrett Billings that was putting up 100 points with the Toronto Rock a handful of years ago. So another impressive win for San Diego. They are for real, and that could very well be a Western Division final preview if things go according to plan. All right, we get into Saturday's action here, and New England goes into Philadelphia, and the Wings, my Wings, Evan, that I picked, Philadelphia, 13-8 the final over the Black Wolves, who just really could never get it started in this one.
And the thing here was, we were talking about this right around halftime. Philly went on a massive run to end the end of the first half. They're up, I believe, about 5, and we're all sitting there thinking, it's like, until this final buzzer goes, none of us are going to believe that they're actually going to win this game. This time, they actually held off New England for a little while. New England got a couple, and then they finally turned on the afterburner. So that was really the key. New England, their offense really only went through 3 sticks: Resetarits, LeBlanc, and Digby. And really the rest of the team wasn't contributing, virtually nothing. So they got to get that fixed. Although Callum Crawford now coming back a game later, which we'll get to later on.
Yes,
but
we're not going to spend any time on Callum Crawford right now because we're going to spend a lot of time on Callum Crawford coming up with Jason Jaros in a little bit here. So big win there for Philadelphia, who actually, they were impressive. And I go back to it, man. You just wonder where this team would be if they could actually finish off some games, but they looked really determined in that game that they weren't going to let that happen again, and they come up with a win over the Black Wolves. They actually get the season series with the Black Wolves winning 2-1 against them this season. The second game of a 3-game season series between the Toronto Rock and Buffalo. Remember, Toronto coming off that tough defeat against Georgia. They come out in this game and they pop in 4 right into the first quarter, lead at 4-0 after the first 15 minutes, Evan, but then they go 30-plus minutes without scoring a goal. And it's not like Buffalo lit it up either. Matt Vince was good. Nick Rose was good. Josh Byrne returned to the Bandits. But a low-scoring defensive battle in front of a huge crowd in Banditland. 8-6 Bandits keep it rolling over the Rock.
Yeah, a bit of a sleeper here. No, the one thing I look at this game, Buffalo's gone 3-1 in its last 4 games. And I can't say I was particularly impressed with any of those 4 efforts. Maybe a little bit lucky to have the record they have right now. They looked terrible when they were in Philly. They lost the next night against Georgia. They didn't have their best effort other than Matt Vince stealing the show in Saskatchewan. And this one, probably a little lucky that they had a tired team without Adam Jones. And they did enough. Toronto, they've literally now kind of cemented themselves into 3rd place with the performance this week. I mean, you picked them twice, but could you have possibly imagined? You thought, okay, maybe they'll get 11,
10 goals total.
First game?
10 or 11 total. Excuse
11,
me.
11 total between 2 games.
Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable from an offense with that much firepower.
Yeah, Vancouver only with 11 goals total in 2 games as well this weekend. And, yeah, you know what? They've missed Reed Reinhold all year long on that left side. There's no question about that. And then you take Adam Jones off that left side as well. Dan Taylor not on that left side anymore as well. And you just, no disrespect to Brandon Slade and Dan Craig and even Johnny Powless over there, who kind of has to become the number 1 guy, Kieran McArdle. It's just not enough on that left side for Toronto right now, and Adam Jones cannot get back quick enough because it just the defense can just pretty much focus in on Hellier and Schreiber and not really have to worry too much about the left side beating you without Jones in there. So I don't know what the prognosis is with Jonesy. They're going to need Jones back in their lineup because I don't see him going too far without him. 2 more games to cover here before we get to Steve Fryer, Evan Schemenauer, and it was Calgary making the long trip across the continent into Rochester, New York to take on the K-Hawks. We were both kind of tempted to take the Nighthawks in this one. We didn't. We both took Calgary, and it turned out to be the right call as the Nighthawks just couldn't get it done. Curtis Dixon with a big night, 12-9, roughies over the K-Hawks.
And a disappointing second half, really, for Rochester. They got one, I believe, 13, 14 seconds into the second half, so they were up 8-6 and scored 1 the rest of the way. Just not enough. Unfortunately, Chris Boucher couldn't follow up on his performance from last week. Just 1 assist in the game. Although Jake Withers, guy continues to amaze me. 21 of 25. When you're facing Tyler Burton, who's no easy feat in the face-off circle, Curtis Dixon with a massive night, and he seemed to just literal. There was that one play where when he bounced off about 4 defenders on his way to the net. So he was on top of things. Christian Del Bianco with a huge night because Rochester outshot Calgary 57-41 in this one, and the power play is what were combined 8 for 9 or something crazy. But yeah, in the end of the day, Rochester just couldn't put in the second half performance they needed. It's a developing team. You're not expecting much at this stage. Just take your lumps as they come, I guess.
Yeah, and we tried to get Curtis Dixon on the program here. Didn't respond. Didn't even answer back. So I'm not sure what to make of that. And that usually doesn't happen very often, but it is what it is. And final game, Vancouver at Colorado. And man, oh man, this was an exercise in futility here a little bit for the Warriors, Evan. And in a game where really their season was on the line, they had to win this game to kind of keep their playoff hopes alive, and they might have played their worst game since coming to Vancouver in either a Warriors or a Stealth jersey. 14-4 the final in a game that featured another beautiful goal over the shoulder from Kyle Killen.
Yeah, the kid's just absolutely stunning. One fan had told us this, and the comment really rings true, is that down the stretch here, the Warriors have become the Stealth of old, and it's unfortunate. Vancouver started Aaron Bold. We talked about this pregame. I agreed with the decision. I thought that a fresh Aaron Bold would be better than a tired Eric Penny. Bold, he just did not have it in that opening half.
What was surprising to me, Evan, is how long they left him in there for the entire game. Like, what was it at halftime? Like 10-3 or something? And I didn't expect him to come out for the second half, but he played the full 60, and I'm not sure why.
No.
I don't know why.
I actually agree with that, because if nothing's working, you're almost in a situation where game's over, let's prepare for the next one, and let's not tire out our starter. So I really don't mind that as much, but
I don't buy the whole getting tired. I don't buy the whole getting tired as the starter, really. You're a professional athlete. If you can't play a back-to-back in this league, like, you're not in good enough shape, because you have to do that in the National Lacrosse League. And if you're not physically fit enough to do it, then get in better shape.
But here's the other thing to take away from this game. We were sitting there talking pregame and thinking Dylan Ward's got to start this game. He just had the game of his career. They're in a game where literally now it's win and you're in. And we're getting word that the plan is to start Steve Fryer. That's been the plan from the start. But you know what? Fryer made the most of his opportunity.
He sure
did.
An
absolute game from him. Stunning. And for a guy that doesn't get much action, I think he maybe gets a game or two a year at best.
Yeah.
And he took full advantage of this, and he woke a lot of people up just as how good he can be.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I'm a GM of the Riptide or the new Nighthawks, I'm looking at Steve Fryer and going, I think he might be the best backup in the league right now after that performance. And I disagreed with the decision from Pat Coyle to start Steve Fryer. I thought Dylan Ward was going to get the nod, and deservedly so. But that's why I'm doing a podcast, and Pat Coyle is going to be on Team Canada's bench come September for the World Championships. He's a better coach than I am, and obviously pushed the right button, and Steve Fryer did not let him down. Hey, Evan, I got an idea. Why don't we talk to Steve Fryer about that performance that he had at the Loud House a couple of nights ago? He'll join us on the other side here on Extreme Threads Lacrosse Classified on the Lax All-Stars Podcast Network.
Associated Labels and Packaging is in the business of creating first impressions. They'll help you reflect your company values accurately by offering solutions that fit your product needs. With the latest in printing technology and over 35 years of experience, Associated Labels and Packaging is the perfect fit for your company to take your labels and packaging to the next level.
Hey, this is Glenn Clark, the head coach of the New England Black Wolves. You're listening to Lacrosse Classified on the Lax All-Stars Podcast Network.
All right, lacrosse fans, welcome back to Lacrosse Classified here on the Lacrosse All-Stars Podcast Network, where we grow the game one podcast at a time, thanks to our friends at Associated Labels and Packaging, my man Sean Ashworth and company, down there at Associated Labels and Packaging in beautiful Coquitlam, British Columbia. Find them online at associated-labels.com. Their social media is Associated LP. And what they do, well, obviously they do labels and packaging, but they create first impressions. And creating his first impression, you see how I did that, Steve? That is a segue. That's what they call a segue right there. Steve, Deep Fryer on the podcast, creating a first impression because it's your first time on the podcast. Deep, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jake.
My pleasure, our pleasure. Down in beautiful Denver, Colorado, here on what is a Monday evening as we record Lacrosse Classified. What does Steve Fryer do when he's not playing lacrosse for the Colorado Mammoth down there in Denver?
So I relocated this year, moved out to Denver for the season, and so when I'm not on the floor, I'm usually hanging out with a few teammates or going to the gym with our trainer, or also going to the game myself. We kind of been going around to almost every middle school and grades like 1 to 5, teaching the game in their gym classes. So yeah, they've been keeping me busy, and I've been having a lot of fun doing it.
One of the things that I hear a lot when I talk to other players about you is just perseverance and how happy they are for you, because you got drafted, you had a shot in Philly, didn't pan out. You spend years on the practice roster trying to get back into the league in Toronto. Finally, the door opens in Colorado, but you're behind who I think is the best goaltender in the game, Dylan Ward, and you get limited opportunities to play. How is it, what has been the motivating factor over these last 6-7 years to keep that dream alive?
Well, first of all, it's pretty fortunate to have good goalies in front of me to learn from, guys like Brandon Miller, Nick Rose, and again, like you said, in my opinion too, I do have one of the best goalies in the game in front of me that I can learn from. And when you look at it, some guys really take a few years, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to kind of find their groove, and some guys like Dylan just happens for them right away. Again, I'm just biding my time here, and as a backup, you just always got to be ready. But obviously, there's going to be expansion and whatnot coming forward, so I don't know what that brings. But I'm just focused on the season right now, and then see what the future holds.
What do you think you have learned from Dylan Ward, Steve?
Pardon?
What do you think you have learned from Dylan Ward in your time in Colorado?
The one thing, he really calms you down when I actually do get to play, and I just even how good he is, I just say little things to him on the bench, and he actually takes it from me, and he just be a sponge, and again, just little tendencies does help me out a lot too, because I think we are the only two in the league. So yeah, just little tendencies, like where I am in the net, and again, when I actually do get a chance to play, he's always the first guy there calming me down and pumping me up. So it's been a lot of fun being his teammate for the last 2 years.
Do you think that's one of the best games of goaltender you've ever played?
Well, I'd have to say so, but I mean, our defense played really well. They were giving me a lot of shots that I wanted to see, and obviously that helps with my confidence, especially early. But and again, too, our offense was firing on all cylinders. So yeah, I would say probably one of my better performances I've ever had. But I hope I can just keep that going when I get a chance again.
And it has to be a huge confidence booster, because you played Friday night in Vancouver. Dylan has probably the best game of his season. You're coming back to Colorado. It's winning your in night. This is probably the most critical game of the season. And yet Pat Coyle's got the confidence to go to you and give you the reins.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to think about it that way, because I was just trying to just treat it like another game, just one possession at a time. But obviously, it's sitting in the back of your head. You know what's on the line. But again, Patty giving me the nod also gave me that much more confidence that he had the faith in me to put me in there when what was at stake. And again, I think that showed as I played. I feel like I was a little nervous in the beginning, but. And again, Patty all game long was giving me more confidence, and luckily we pulled out the win.
When did you know you were going to get the start, Steve?
He told me after the game in Calgary. So after the game, I saw him after, and he was actually watching another game, and I just kind of walked up, was looking at the score, and he just said, "Hey, by the way, you're gonna start next Saturday night." And I said, "Okay, thanks very much. Look forward to it."
Do you, and as a goaltender, like goalies are kind of different like that. Some goalies don't like to know. Some goalies like to find out on game day. Some guys like to know a week in advance. Does it matter to you when you get that nod or that tap that you're going to be in, or do you just kind of wait for it and take it when it comes?
I mean, in my earlier days, I kind of was a little weird like that. I always wanted to know, but I mean, now being in my position for as long as I have, I gotta always be ready, even if I'm not starting. Something can happen in warm-ups, something can happen early in the game. Game could be not going our way, so I've just taught myself now to just always be ready, and whenever I get the chance, just go in, one possession at a time, and just go from there.
I think back to about 2-3 weeks ago, things were not looking good for the Mammoth. I know Jake even had you guys dead last in his power rankings back then. And all of a sudden now we got 3 wins in a row. What has changed in the confidence of this team that the results have come all of a sudden?
Well, picking up the acquisitions we did. I know losing a guy like Benesh is tough, but picking up Vitarelli, I think's been good for us. He's been really helping out our lefties, Eli McLaughlin, Chris Wardle, and Jeff Whittier. But and also too picking up a solid stay-at-home D guy like Ian Lord was huge for us. And I mean, right away made an impact. Even in that first game he played, he stopped the last shot with about 30 seconds left to seal the win for us. But I mean, that's just the kind of player he is, and I think that's what we needed. And obviously, adding him to Vitarelli gives us a bit more size, both on the front and back end. But I think it was more of a little reality check too, right? That the guys are like, basically everyone was kind of on the bubble. So I think that kind of brought us a bit closer together too. Once the trades were done, and like I said, they both came in. They're great team guys and great in the room. And again, it showed in the last 3 games. And we're playing our best lacrosse right now, and I think it's a good time for us to be doing that.
Speaking with the deep one, Steve Fryer here on Lacrosse Classified, and like Ryan Lee is having a great season. The rookie Kyle Killen has kind of come out of nowhere and opened a bunch of eyeballs. But to me, it's Eli McLaughlin's kind of offense now, especially with the departure of Ryan Benesh. He had kind of taken another step to start the year, but it almost seems like since Benesh has been traded, it's kind of like, all right, now this is my offense. And he's just taken his game to another level again. How good is Eli McLaughlin?
I mean, when he's shooting on me at practice, there's some practices, he's always dialed in, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to be taking shots from a guy of that caliber. But no, honestly, it's fun to watch, and every game he seems to be getting better and better, and I think that's coming with his confidence too. But again, another great team guy. It's all about team with him too. And like I said, it could be he could score 5 goals in a game, or he could score 0 goals in a game. To him, it's just if we get the win on the scoreboard, and that's huge for our team having guys like that. But yeah, no, he's playing like a freak right now in my opinion. But we got 4 games left, and it's going to be fun. Hopefully, he carries that into a playoff run here.
I got to ask you about DiPiochi. This was something I loved last year. I was sad that actually the Mammoth haven't brought it back. But for the listeners that haven't seen this before, last year they got you and a few of your teammates to put on earphones, listen to a song. I believe you were singing Toto by Africa, and just you belted it out. You didn't care if you were in tune, but it was phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it's again, meet those media days. You kind of want to have fun with it, right? It's more or less for the fans too, but also gives us a little chance to kind of just be loose and yeah. Started out with 1 song, then I ended up singing 2. But yeah, again, if I'm getting called upon, I'm going to put my best effort forward, right? So.
Absolutely. Well, before we let you go here, Deep, I heard Little Birdie told me there might be some plans to come west this summer and maybe put the old black and blue back on. Can you confirm or deny these rumors?
I believe it's in the works right now, but
nothing official yet.
Nothing's official yet, no. But again, I have a chance to be a starting goalie out in Langley this summer, and I want to be playing. So hopefully, if things work out, that's actually what I'm planning on doing. But yeah, so you'll probably be seeing me a lot this summer, Jake.
Well, I will look forward to that, and I'm sure I'm going to see you in Saskatchewan before the summer rolls around. Steve, I appreciate you taking a little time to join us here on Lax Class, and continued success, my man. And we'll talk to you sooner than later.
Thanks, Jake. We'll see you soon.
Appreciate it. That was Steve Deep Fryer, goaltender for the Colorado Mammoth, and apparently coming west to play for the Langley Thunder in the WLA this summer. So we'll look forward to that. And the Rush, Evan, still 2 more matchups to go with the Mammoth this season. It's going to be fun lacrosse here coming down the backstretch.
Yeah, and the 4 teams that are realistically in the playoffs are fairly tight. San Diego's got a little bit of leeway, but anybody can still pull off first. Anybody can still pull off fifth. So nothing's decided yet.
Absolutely, and you wouldn't want it any other way. So let's get to break here, Evan, because on the other side, we have the General Counsel for the Professional Lacrosse Players Association, Jason Jaros, who was front and center for the appeal of one Callum Crawford, who had his 5-game suspension reduced to 1. We're going to find out why here on the other side. Stick around. This is Extreme Threads Lacrosse Classified on the Lacrosse All-Stars Podcast Network.
Serving the business and sports community since 2018, Extreme Threads provides custom design apparels around the world. Specializing in lacrosse, they deliver exceptional quality and service, customizing box and field team apparel and uniforms. Extreme Threads offers free design work and takes the time to ensure you get exactly what you need for your team or club. Contact Extreme Threads at sales@extremethreads.ca for your custom apparel needs today.
Hey, this is Dane Doley from the Calgary Roughnecks. You're listening to Lacrosse Classified on Lax All-Stars, growing the game one podcast at a time.
All right, lacrosse fans, welcome back to Lacrosse Classified here on Lax All-Stars. Jake Elliott, Evan Schemenauer, and now joined by Professional Lacrosse Players Association General Counsel Jason Jaros. Before we get started here, Jason, I just wanted to read off the final 2 paragraphs of the hearing officer's ruling in the Callum Crawford appeal. So bear with me here for a second while I read this to the fans. I do not find any intent to inflict harm by Mr. Crawford and do not believe that the league has just cause to suspend this 14-year veteran from playing in almost 30% of the season, 5 of 18 games. Beyond the match penalty suspension already served, the league intent behind the repeat offender rule is a necessary one to prevent unnecessary injury caused by reckless and endangering play. But I do not see that in this case here. As in his testimony from the league, Mr. Lemon explained how he did not believe the foul should result in a 2-game penalty, one reserved for more severe infractions. The decision to lessen Mr. Crawford's additional 5-game suspension in no way diminishes the league's mission to eliminate reckless and endangering play, nor does it undermine the league's authority. After a review of the totality of the evidence, in my testimony, it is my opinion that Mr. Crawford's 1-game match penalty be upheld and an additional 1-game suspension for his status as a repeat offender assessed. Before we get into all that, I just kind of wanted to get that in off the top because that is Andrew Brandt, who we efforted to get onto the podcast. He declined to come on. That was his ruling in the appeal. So, Jason, I want to start with you and ask you exactly how does the appeal process work from start to finish?
Sure, I'd be glad to answer that. The appeal process is contained in the collective bargaining agreement. It's been in the agreement for 20 years. Essentially, when a player is disciplined, whether it be a fine or a suspension, either for a violation of, let's say, the NLL rulebook or a violation of some conduct that could be considered detrimental to the league, for example, an off-field incident. The player is served with what's called the notice of discipline with a penalty. The Players Association would get a copy of that. In the event that there is an appeal of the discipline, the matter is then presented to an independent hearing officer or arbitrator for a ruling on the discipline.
So one of the frustrations I've heard from fans for many, many years is the length that this process plays out. And by the time we had a final decision in the Crawford case, almost 4 weeks had elapsed from the point where the incident happened. And trying to find out why it takes such a long time, because we get to a situation where, the games happen Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We don't get a decision on the discipline until Thursday night, Friday morning. Almost every time it gets appealed, then we get into the player's going to play the following week. Then maybe it gets dropped the following week, maybe it doesn't. And then it takes another couple of weeks before this even gets heard. And I've heard the term suspension shopping out there quite a bit. The player's kind of deciding when he wants to sit. Why does it just take so long for all this to happen?
Well, I will say in the Crawford case, it probably took perhaps a few more days or longer than it ordinarily would. But you have a number of factors. First of all, the review by the league may take some time and analysis. There's an investigation that has to be performed, including review of video and witness statements and the like. And then a decision is made. That may take a few days. Then the discipline is imposed. And then the materials are everything that the league considered in its investigation is then turned over to the Players Association for its review to determine whether or not it will appeal, whether it has grounds to appeal. So that may take some time. And then most of the time is really dependent upon the hearing officer's schedule. So you have a hearing officer who has to have an available date. They try to make themselves readily available. You have counsel for the league who has to make himself available, myself, and then you have witnesses who all have to be available. So we try to move these things as fast as we can. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than the parties would like, but that's really sort of the nature of the beast.
Speaking with Jason Jaros, Jason, is the appeal process not an automatic one? So you guys decide what to appeal or when to appeal, or is it just if a player gets suspended, there's going to be an appeal process? Well,
it's a matter of semantics, I guess, because when discipline is issued on any player, the union has a short time in which to file a written appeal. So,
but it literally happens every time. Like I haven't seen a case where you guys don't appeal, and maybe you appeal and then go, you know what, we're not going to win this one, let's drop the appeal. But the appeal process gets put in motion every time, does it not?
Well, there's a reason for it, because there's such a short window in which to file the appeal in writing that is generally an automatic, and it's simply done to preserve those time limits, and then it buys the Players Association time for it to receive the materials from the league. It gives them an opportunity to review it. So the actual technical filing of the appeal is nothing more than again, to preserve time limits.
Okay.
What really matters is after the Players Association makes its review and then determines whether or not it will withdraw the appeal, which incidentally occurs in the vast majority of disciplinary cases, including suspensions, or whether it will present the case to a hearing officer.
But not in this one. How is the arbitrator, the independent arbitrator, selected?
The arbitrators are mutually selected by the parties.
And by parties, you mean?
I mean the league and the Players Association.
Okay, so the actual team, the Black Wolves, don't really have a say in who the arbitrator is. It comes from the league office and the Players Association.
That's correct.
And is there a panel of arbitrators that you select from, or do you just have a bunch of names and go, let's go with this guy this time, or how does that process work?
Yeah, currently there are 2 hearing officers on the panel, and they hear cases on a rotating basis. They alternate.
Okay, but there's just 2
right now. The names
have
changed over the last 20 years, but there's always a panel in place.
But there's only 2 guys on that panel right now.
Currently, that's correct.
Okay.
Let's take a look here at the differences, because obviously there was a precedent set already with Greg Harnett, And he got a reduction just because of the ambiguity of the written rule, which got changed after the fact. But he still got 5 games, and the arbitrator ruled that 41-4 was applicable, and he needs to serve the games. What's different in the evidence between what happened with Harnett, which, to be frankly honest, was a borderline match penalty, in my opinion, and Callum Crawford, who was a very obvious match penalty, but all of a sudden he gets the reduction where Harnett doesn't?
Well, first of all, they're two different situations, two different incidents, and so naturally you may have different outcomes. In terms of the specific reasons as to why Harnett served 5 games and why Crawford will not, I guess that remains to be seen, and I'm somewhat reluctant to talk about the specifics in the Crawford case because although we received what we call a bench decision, we are still waiting for the full-blown written opinion, and obviously I don't want to comment on the case if it'll prejudice the case.
Jason, but the general consensus is, though, that the Greg Harnett infractions were much less than what the Crawford incidents were, but yet he's the guy that serves the time and Crawford doesn't, when Crawford's egregiances were more severe than what Harnett's was, and that's, I think, the part that people can't make sense of.
Well, again, I'll have a better handle on, and I'll be in a better position to answer that question when I get the full-blown opinion in the Crawford case. And I know that is probably not helpful to your listeners, but
I understand that, Jason. I understand you haven't got the official thing back, so you gotta tread lightly. Maybe you can explain to me and the listeners how all of a sudden a rule that is clearly in black and white in the National Lacrosse League's rule book all of a sudden becomes, I guess, null and void, like it doesn't exist when it gets to the point where it's at an arbitrator. How is an arbitrator just allowed to say, you know what, I don't think that rule should apply in this situation? Does that not just open up a huge Pandora's box that anything could be appealed and go to an arbitrator and be overturned? A hooking call, a fighting call, a fan goes into the stands and knocks out or a player goes into the stands and knocks out a fan. Well, that's in the rule book, but it goes to an arbitrator and he says, well, you know what, there was extenuating circumstances here and we can understand why this happened and we're not going to penalize him for it. I don't understand how a rule just doesn't become a rule because it goes to an arbitrator. Can you explain that?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The players are obviously bound by the rules, and it is the league that unilaterally drafts, imposes the rules, and unilaterally imposes consequences, discipline for violation of the rules. Okay, and that's the league's authority. On the other hand, in the collective bargaining agreement, the players have what's called the just cause provision, and that's a legal term, and there are many facets to a just cause provision, and what that does is that it allows a hearing officer, as the hearing officer in the Brandt case mentioned, as the hearing officer in the Harnett decision referred to, as the hearing officers have over 20 years, even though you have what appears to be a black and white rule, when you apply the just cause standard, there may be some extenuating or mitigating circumstances that warrant less than. What is
the just cause in? Sorry, Jason. What is the just cause in this situation? What was the extenuating circumstances that they used to open this window up? What was the just cause in this situation?
In which situation? In the Crawford situation?
Yeah, why would the hearing officer say, well, I read you the paragraph, he didn't believe that there was intent to cause harm, which is just mind-boggling after watching the video, but what was the just cause for him to say this rule should not apply to Callum Crawford?
Well, again, that would be contained in his full-blown written decision, and we'll have to wait and see in that regard. But let me just say that In every case, well, I shouldn't say in every case, but in cases that go before a hearing officer, if you have a player who has clearly committed an infraction, then the next question is appropriateness of the penalty. And appropriateness of the penalty is actually an element of just cause. There are several. In fact, there are a number of texts and articles and probably hundreds of thousands of decisions that analyze that legal standard. But the one that you're asking about is one of the elements of just cause is appropriateness of the penalty. In other words, does the punishment fit the crime? And what a hearing officer or an arbitrator will do to make that determination is consider things like, well, in the lacrosse scenario, intent and let's say the amount of force that is used, whether it's in a dead ball situation, whether the player was making a lacrosse move, the number of steps that he took, where the initial point of the contact was made, all of those things. And I mean, there are dozens and dozens of factors, but of course every case is different, and you have to assess those cases on a case-by-case basis. And let me just say one thing about the rule that appears to be black and white. Obviously, that I think you're referring to the repeat offender rule when somebody's found guilty of a 41-4 match. It's an automatic. There are occasions, a rare occasion, where a strict application of a rule like that would not be appropriate in the circumstances. In fact, I'll give you just a hypothetical, stark example where the principle is obvious. Let's say that you have two factory workers who get into a fist fight, and they're both terminated from employment because the company has a rule that if its employees get into a physical altercation, it's automatic termination. Now, most of the time, that's the end of the inquiry. On the other hand, let's assume in that same hypothetical that coworker number one, completely unprovoked, just attacks coworker number two and is pummeling him, and the only way coworker two can prevent serious injury to himself is to fight back, and he does so. Now, obviously, there's a question as to whether that second coworker number two, should be terminated under that black and white rule that seems so unambiguous and so
Jason,
clear.
I don't know if you can use that as an example, though, man. Like, you're talking about a player that targeted another player's head with his elbow, and that other player was defenseless. Like, he didn't even get back up and try and go back after him because his helmet went flying and he was down on the turf. So using that hypothetical as an example, that doesn't really translate to me. That's kind of apples and oranges.
I understand. I use that hypothetical so that your listeners can understand what it means to have extenuating or mitigating circumstances. Now, obviously, most of the cases that I handle in sports and even outside of sports are not that obvious. Okay, these circumstances are not that obvious. In fact, most of them, but that doesn't mean they do not exist.
Right.
And so the appeal process simply allows a player to ask the hearing officer to consider that which he may deem to be mitigating, extenuating. So that's why
I hear.
That's why
so what was?
Example to you.
Sorry, Evan. Yeah. What? So exactly when you guys said, okay, we're going to appeal this, what was the basis of your appeal? Because we've heard that Callum Crawford's income was a factor in the appeal. We heard that his family situation, his living situation, was to be considered in the appeal. What other factors did you guys bring to the table saying, we don't think Callum Crawford should get a 5-game suspension because of this, because of these things? What were the list of things that you guys said, this is what we're appealing and why?
Well, again, I have to be careful about commenting on the Crawford case for the reasons that I previously mentioned. We're still waiting for the full-blown opinion. But so I can't give you the specifics, but I will tell you that that case was reviewed internally by the Players Association and determined that it did have merit to proceed to a hearing. Again, the vast majority of suspension cases are not brought to a hearing for good reason, quite frankly. But the Crawford case, it was argued over a series of several hours. So, I'm not sure that I could do a justification providing all of those details to you in just a short time here.
Okay. And here's one thing that a lot of the feedback I'm getting from the players, I know Jake's getting back from the players, you guys are really in a big conflictual situation here, because you've got one player who's arguing he needs his income and he shouldn't be suspended as long. But on the flip side, you've got a Bradley Cree who is, he could have been seriously injured here. And you've got a number of players who are saying, okay, does this mean that now that this suspension is reduced, is it open season? And have you just compromised our safety as a result of this? So how do you deal with the conflictual side of, you got one player and maybe one team that's got an interest in having him on the floor, but the bigger picture says, hold on a second here, there's a safety factor involved.
Yeah, I understand what appears to be an apparent conflict, and that apparent conflict exists in every union in the United States and Canada, because you have the one players association representing several members. Well, let me just say, on the side of the player that is being disciplined, he has a contractual right and a due process right to give his side of the story to an independent hearing officer before punishment is assessed to him. That's a basic due process right that our players have, that everybody should have in every workplace and even outside of the workplace. But with respect to the player safety, and I understand that concern, and quite frankly, professionally, for me, it's sort of a difficult situation to be in, but I have to set that aside. When you're talking about player safety, there are things like, it depends specifically what you're talking about, because the Players Association is able to take active steps and bargain for things that will make it safe for the players. Like, for example, we've negotiated provisions in the collective bargaining agreement that guarantee medical coverage, that guarantee that medical bills will be paid. The teams are required to have insurance policies, that the players have a contractual entitlement to be paid a portion of their salary when they're injured. They have access to injury attorneys. In fact, the same injury attorneys that are used by the players in the National Football League. So, when it comes to player safety in that respect, the Players Association has been very active. However, when you're talking about player safety as it relates to player conduct, it's extremely important to understand that the Players Association has no authority whatsoever to govern a player conduct, either on or off the field. And that includes when you have one of its members injuring another member. The Players Association is not able to negotiate any of the playing rules or the consequences of any violation of a playing rule, including a suspension. That's a management rights prerogative, and that has been held by the league for the past 20 years. I wish it were different, but we're not able to negotiate, let's say, penalties or suspensions or consequences. And if we were able to do that, then the players themselves would have a say at the bargaining table in terms of what should happen to a player who violates the rules. In fact, I'll give you an example. Some time ago, I negotiated the drug policy that's in the collective bargaining agreement. We negotiated the procedure, and we attempted, the players wanted to set forth the consequences of violations of that policy, for example, a first-time offender, but the league would not negotiate those items, and it's left to their discretion and to the just cause provision in the collective bargaining agreement. Now, that's not a criticism of the league. They're simply maintaining their rights as management, as the employer. So I'm hopeful that that has answered your question.
Okay. Yeah, well, maybe a few clarification points on this. And these are things that just come through the woodwork as we've been going through this. First off, Bradley Cree, does he have any right to participate in the process as a impacted third party during this appeal process?
Which process?
During the Crawford process.
Well, the disciplinary appeal process is there for the player that's subject to discipline. So Brad Cree may have some, or any other player who's injured may have some other forum, but not as it pertains to the disciplinary procedure.
Well, you made mention of
injured during the process. It would not be a party to the proceeding.
Okay. You made mention of witnesses. So who are the witnesses in this situation?
Well, again, I won't comment specifically on the Crawford case, but ordinarily you have a league representative who sets forth a rationale for the discipline, the interpretation of the rule and its application. Oftentimes you have referees who testify in the case, or any eyewitness, for that matter, is able to offer testimony or evidence. Sometimes you have the player testimony.
Yeah, so could that not have been Brad Cree in that situation? Could he not have testified? He was pretty much an eyewitness.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess you'd have to discuss that with him. I'm not sure how to answer the question.
Yeah, here's another thing that's there, and this is something a lot of fans and a lot of players, for that matter, have expressed concern about. Now, this is a star player having a situation, and there's a lot of people out there who feel this is star treatment, and that's totally fair. But now that this precedent's been set, if a lower end player had a repeat offense like this, the expectation would be that the same punishment would apply regardless of who the player is, correct?
I'm sorry, the same punishment would apply regardless of the player.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter whether he's an MVP caliber player or a fringe roster player. If the infraction is level with both players, the penalty should be the same to both players.
Yeah. Oh, I understand the question. Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. In fact, in the Crawford case, star power was not argued by either side. That didn't even come up in the hearing, and I don't think it was a factor at all.
Jason, speaking with General Counsel for the Professional Lacrosse Players Association, what kind of message do you think this sends to the rest of your members when you go to bat for a guy who, and again, like, I don't think anyone is hating on Crawford here. I'm certainly not. I like Callum Crawford as a human being, but we're talking about a guy who made two really bad decisions in a 2-year span on two different players on two different occasions, and yet the rule that states what the penalty should be for that has been reduced because you guys appealed it. What message do you think you're sending to your other members by doing that? Do you not kind of feel like you're saying, hey, this happened, we know it was bad, but we're going to reduce it anyway, so, you guys are kind of free to go out and do something stupid too, and we can probably get your penalty reduced as well. Like, do you know what I'm saying here, Jason? Like, it really seems like he's opened up a big Pandora's box here, and it's going to be open season on headshots because they look at this and go, well, they just reduced his 5-game suspension to 1 for 2 headshots in 2 years, so the rule book doesn't really apply. So let's go headhunting now.
Well, again, if those suspension, the number of games were negotiated, and we were able to negotiate those at the bargaining table, maybe you have a different outcome. In the Crawford case, we're simply not able to do it. I wish we were, like we wanted to do with respect to the drug policy. But in terms of the message that we were sending, I don't know that we're sending any message other than the message that every player in every sport, in every professional sport, and just about every employee in every union has a right to due process, a notice of charges, and an opportunity to be heard before punishment is assessed. That's the message that should be understood.
Now, I'm a CPA. I always got to look back to numbers and see how this makes sense. And here's, I guess, where I'm having a bit of a problem with it. I'm assuming here Callum Crawford's making league max or pretty much league max. So had he missed these games, he would have been out about $10,000 in salary. You're getting it reduced to 2 games, about $3,300 of missed salary. So you saved him about $6,700. Then I think back to a guy like Carson Leung, who, to be frankly honest, because of a headshot, he is now out at least $100,000 in salary, plus I don't know how much in medical bills the rest of his life. To me, the finances of defending a lost salary don't even make sense in their own right.
You know, in the Carson Leung case, again, what happened to him, the Players Association, in terms of player conduct, whether it was a penalty or whether there should have been a fine or suspension, the players do not have a say. Again, that's a management prerogative. But in terms of salary, I don't know that that's a factor in disciplinary appeals. Certainly, the proposed suspension of a total of 6 games for Callum Crawford, that would be something that the hearing officer would consider, because, for example, if that suspension was upheld, that would have been the most severe suspension in the history of the league, and I've been representing the players since the inception of the league.
Yeah. But the rule was in the book. Like, everybody signed off on this, saying, like, okay, like, it's not like nobody or anybody didn't know what the penalties were going to be if something like this happened. Like, it wasn't like a big surprise, like, oh, I did this. What do you mean I get 5 games suspended? We've seen it happen with Greg Harnett, so it wasn't like it was a big surprise if something bad happened that he was going to get suspended. As we speak with Jason Jaros, a couple of more minutes here. We appreciate your time here on Lacrosse Classified. We won't keep you too much longer, but a couple of more questions for sure. How you mentioned the 2 hearing officers on the panel. What is the criteria for those guys to get selected? Because after reading Andrew Brandt's deliberation, I guess you would call it, like, I wonder, has the guy even ever seen a lacrosse game before? So what is the criteria for selecting a hearing officer?
Well, you know, the criteria can sort of depend. You know, in terms of, I don't know that, well, what I can say about the 2 hearing officers that we have is that they're highly regarded attorneys in the sports industry. They understand hearing procedure, adjudication. They understand sports. They understand injuries. I mentioned they happen to be attorneys. They understand rules of evidence and those kinds of things. So, you know, I don't know that there's a checklist in terms of who can be appointed to a hearing officer, but that's why you have both sides, the league and the Players Association. We have a discussion about the hearing officers, about their credentials, about their reputation, their
so are you, okay?
That kind of thing.
Are you okay with his statement, his deliberation of the appeal process? Like, are you on board with all the things that he stated in that document?
Well, again, I don't want to comment on what he's issued already, because I'm still waiting for, you know, the brunt of the decision, the meat of the decision. But, you know, his decision is his decision. I don't know that, you know, my own personal opinion matters.
Well, I mean, just the general consensus is it's so far out there, like, it's almost unbelievable when you read that. You don't agree with that?
Well, I'm not sure. Again, I when we get the full-blown decision, maybe he'll shed some light on any misunderstandings or any confusion in what he's ruled on. But, you know, what he's provided thus far is simply that the hearing officer has the authority to reduce a suspension where appropriate, and that we've known for 20 years.
But his biggest statement, Jason, is that he believes that Callum Crawford didn't intend to cause any harm. And maybe Crawford didn't in his own mind, but all you have to do is watch the 2 videos. The guy leaves his feet, sticks his elbow into another player's head blindsided. How is that not intent to harm somebody? That's like that. I can't wrap my head around that.
Well, I guess that's a question for the hearing officer who decided the case, and I'm hopeful he addresses it in his decision.
Yeah.
He may or may not.
Okay.
I can't speak for him.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on. I got a whole other issue outside of Crawford that I guess it's bugging the back of my mind. You might be the person to actually answer it. And then, if you ever read my stuff, I harp on attendance to death, and a lot of inflated attendance figures going on around the league. Clearly, they're not. There's a number of markets that are just not getting the number of people in the building that they're stating. Now, I think back to the CBA negotiation where you negotiated a ticket count bonus structure. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, if the league is presenting an attendance figure, regardless if that person's in the seat or not, that counts towards that bonus structure. And even if the numbers are inflated and people aren't showing up, that should still count to what a player should get for a bonus by the end of the year.
Okay, again, I don't have the provision in front of me. I apologize. It's been some time since I've looked at that provision. But and what was the question relating to attendance?
So, there's a lot of attendance numbers which clearly don't reflect the number of people in the building. But it's based on what they announce for attendance, is it not? Or that drop count that actually counts towards the player's bonus, is it not?
Well, that's the theory. That's what the provision says. But in terms of, the attendance and how we're going to count it and calculate it, that's a discussion that, the association will have with the league, and will come up with a formula and a way to calculate those numbers. At this point in time, I just don't have a handle on it. It's a relatively new provision and hasn't come into play quite yet. So maybe in the future I'd be able to provide you with more information in that regard.
A couple more minutes here with Jason Jaros, I promise. I just I threw out a blanket when we found out that you were going to come on the podcast here, Jason, and I asked a multitude of people if they had any questions that they wanted asked and answered. And one of them was, why have the Board of Governors or the owners have not received a signed copy back from the CBA yet?
Well, the parties are just finalizing some of the language, some of the nuances, but for all intent and purposes, the contract has been ratified, and the players and the owners are currently operating under that contract. So the mere signatures are simply a technicality, but we're still sort of fine-tuning the language to make sure we get it right, obviously.
Okay, and the final one was
it's common. It happens in other sports. I happen to represent professional hockey players, and I represent unions outside of sports, and that's common, quite frankly.
Okay, fair enough. And the final question I have for you, Jason, is that apparently the league has been sitting on about 3 rounds of expansion payments that have not been delivered because of what they say, allegedly, you guys don't know how to divide those up. Can you shed some light on that?
I really can. I guess I'd have to have a discussion with the league in terms of those payments. I'm not, as I sit here today, I'm not quite exactly sure where we are, but I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to comment on that this time.
Okay. Well, Jason, listen, I know that was probably not the easiest interview you've ever done, and we appreciate your time, and I know there were some tough questions in there, and we appreciate you doing your best to answer them. I know the fans especially have a lot of questions as far as how this entire process played out and why it went the way it did. So I hope we did our best to explain that, as did you, and thanks for coming on Lacrosse Classified here.
Okay, Jake and Ev, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Goodbye now.
That was Jason Jaros, the General Counsel for the Professional Lacrosse Players Association, and that was some good stuff in there, Evan.
Yeah, I think there's still some gaps in there that I still have in my mind, and obviously he's not able to answer every question.
Yeah, with not having a signed thing back, it made it a little, he couldn't or wouldn't answer anything specifically on Crawford, which kind of sucked.
But I still don't get it, that how did this defense work for Crawford and not for Harnett? What's different? And that's the thing that's still overriding my head, as to how a precedent is set with the first ruling officer. The second ruling officer comes and said, you know what, I'm going to throw that one out.
Yeah.
And I still don't have it in my head as to how this benefits the PLPA, because in my mind, Crawford has to sit those 5 games for the betterment of the league and the safety of the players.
Yeah. Just the optics alone on it are so bad that they've let this happen. My biggest fear out of it all, though, Evan, is for guys like a Brian Cole or Nick Bielich that have a game under their belt where they're walking on thin ice, and if they do something silly again, they're going to be in trouble. Do they maybe start to think, well, you know what, look what just happened. If I do something bad again, I'll get off. You just have to appeal it, and, we'll get the hearing officer in there, and he'll lessen things. No big deal. Oh. And all of a sudden, sticks start to come up. All of a sudden, elbows start to come up. Guys are turning back. My biggest fear is that they've opened a door here to let players start to go nuts.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, is 2 games going to deter you from going after a star player? I don't think it would. And the other thing that still boggles my mind is this whole disciplinary process to begin with. And I think back to the 2017 finals, right? Jordan McIntosh gets suspended game 1 of the final. What happens? Immediate appeal. He gets to continue to play, and there's no way they're going to have an appeal hearing before the end of the finals.
Right.
Why is it he's allowed to continue in that best-of-3 series when he's already suspended? The NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball,
I'll tell you why, Evan.
Days to sort this.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. It's because they don't want to lose players for important games, so they open that gap up. Just in case, so, they can go through this process, their player can play the next 1 or 2 games, and then have to deal with the consequences if that's the case. And they all agree to that. So, the owners, the Players Association, they all agree to that. And if that's what they want to agree to, that's what they want to agree to. I don't think there's much to do about that. But for me, it's the hearing officer that I have probably the biggest issue with. I know the Players Association is doing their job because they have to protect their player. I feel bad for Brad Cree because nobody's really looking after his best interest in this situation, except for paying his medical bills and looking after him that way. So they're doing their due diligence. The league kind of has to wash their hands with it once it goes to arbitration. There's not much they can say or do. But this hearing officer, this panel of 2 guys, this is what kind of gets my back up a little bit. I mean, I really wonder whether or how many lacrosse games this Andrew Brandt has actually watched, because for him to say what he said in his deliberation is just like, it's so far out there. I don't know how. It's like he's never seen a game before.
And people found this on his own Twitter feed. That this was about 4 years ago. He was making comments about
Odell Beckham.
That Odell Beckham Jr. has to be suspended because he just did a targeted headshot. I can't believe for 2 seconds he actually wrote that one paragraph in the ruling saying that this in no way compromises player safety. It does. Let's just be flat out blunt. It does.
Big time.
And there's going to be the next incident, and we're all going to be telling the league, we told you so. Well, but you know what? I can't blame the league here because the league did their job. The league issued the suspension that they were supposed to.
Yeah, I think people need to be clear on that, right? Like, I think everybody's done their job here. It's just the process that is flawed, and it's flawed majorly. Regardless, Evan, we've run super long here with Jason Jaros, so we appreciate his time. We got to get to break, and then we got Stampede Tags. Who you got coming up to wrap up the podcast? Thanks for hanging with us here on Extreme Threads Lacrosse Classified. We'll be back right after this.
Pure Vita Labs is proud to bring you the highest quality sports supplements on the market. PVL products are 100% all natural with no artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners. And the entire line is also Informed Choice certified. We designed all our products with the athlete in mind. We look forward to being a part of your athletic achievements, helping you push the bar higher, win at the highest levels, and set personal records for years to come.
Hey, this is Nick Rose, goaltender for the Toronto Rock. You're listening to Lacrosse Classified on the Lax All-Stars Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Lax Class Lacrosse fans. Thanks to our friends at Pure Vita Labs. Anything else to be unsportsmanlike, all natural, ProChurch certified. Tons of lacrosse players on the supplements, including Evan Schemenauer. On the PVL supplements. How's it going with that, Evan? Are you still holding steady?
We're still holding steady, but considering I put on so much weight over the years before that, holding steady is a vast improvement.
Well, I can tell you after 3 months of on the treadmill, 3 months of eating salad every day, gaining weight is much, much easier than losing weight. I can tell you that for sure after extensive research that I've done over the last 3 months. But I can also tell you that if you exercise and eat properly, losing weight is possible. Not to strain my elbow, patting myself on the back here, Evan, but I am down about 25 pounds in the last 3 months following a healthy lifestyle. Yeah, no, and I want to keep going. I stepped on a scale 3 months ago, and it'd probably been about 8 years since I'd stepped on a scale previous to that. And I could not believe my eyeballs what the number read back to me. So that kind of opened my eyes and got me on the path here a little bit. And now I kind of feel like I've crossed the threshold. Like now it's become routine instead of having to think about it. And so things are going well, and I'm going to try to keep going. Hashtag Tarps Off 2020. We'll see what happens.
And maybe just got to get you on some carnitine and whatnot and just help you give you a little bit more of a push to get that metabolism up. And
yeah, if I could get
it works. It does work.
Yeah, so maybe our next prize giveaway, we're going to reach out to the folks at PVL, and maybe we'll come up with a PVL prize pack for the next time somebody wants to make me or you look stupid on social media. How about that? Speaking of social media, follow our friends at Stampede Tack because they sponsor this award-winning edition of Who You Got, and it's presented by Stampede Tack and Western Wear. Your complete source for boots, huge selection. I'm talking huge. If you've never been in Stampede Tack and Western Wear out there in beautiful Cloverdale, it is a massive store. It is huge out there in Cloverdale, and it is full of cowboy boots and Blundstones out there as well. Birthday's coming up, Evan. I hear I'm getting a pair. I'm quite excited about it. They are CSA approved. They ship Canada-wide, and you can find them online at stampede.ca. Shopping online, still shopping local. Just 4 games here in a Week 16 of the National Lacrosse League, Evan. You got the 5-game lead, so I cannot catch you even if you go 0-4 and I go 4-0, which is really unlikely the way the last 3 weeks have gone here on Who You Got. But let's see how this week goes. First up, Philadelphia at Toronto. Evan, who you got?
Toronto's coming off perhaps the worst weekend they possibly could. I think they got a little bit of revenge coming at this weekend. Plus, I'm in the lead. I can start taking favorites and force you to take underdogs to try and catch up. I'm taking the Rock.
Yeah, you're right. Don't forget, remember the last time these two teams, was it the last time these two teams played in Toronto? Philadelphia had that late lead, and they turned it over. Schreiber came down the floor. They tied it, sent it to overtime, end up winning in overtime. So Toronto was right there with, or Philadelphia was right there with Toronto in that one. That was early in the year. Toronto coming off of 2 really disappointing losses. We still don't know if Adam Jones is going to be back in the lineup. Not sure what's going on there in Toronto, and I'm down 5 games, so give me Philadelphia. Why not?
Ooh.
What do I got to lose?
Okay.
I got nothing to lose here, Evan. Philadelphia, give it to me.
Other than an early retirement in this one.
Well, hey, I got to do what I got to do here. I mean, I'm not going to make up any ground picking the same teams as you. San Diego at Calgary. Seals in first place. Calgary sitting at a cool 500, 7-7. Seals 8-4. Big game in the Rough House. I expect a huge crowd for this one in Calgary on Saturday night. San Diego at Calgary. Evan, who you got?
Tough one. Very tough one. And I honestly considered flipping the coin, but I'm not going to go that direction. Simple thing is, when you have a close game like this and you can't figure out who you're going to pick, take the home team. I'll take the Roughnecks.
Give me San Diego. You might see how this strategy of mine is working here so far, Evan. Give me San Diego. They're in first place, coming off a win.
Let's see how much longer it stays.
Coming off a win over Saskatchewan. See if the Seals can keep it rolling. Give me the Seals over Calgary. 2 more games to go, and I will be calling this one. You'll be at this game. My lady's actually coming to Saskatoon with me, Evan. I was going to mention that to you before we got on the call here. So she may need a ticket.
I'll have to be your tour guide or something for the weekend. Yeah.
So we'll look forward to that. She can hopefully sit with you during the game here as well. Vancouver at Saskatchewan. Remember, Vancouver coming off that 0-2 previous weekend. Their playoff hopes are diminishing quickly. Warriors at the Rush. Evan, who you got?
I'm going to bunt on this one. I'm going to take the Rush, knowing you're taking the Rush, and I'm not going to lose a game on this one.
Oh, man. I was really hoping you'd take the Warriors, Evan. I was really hoping you'd just take the Warriors for me, but apparently you're not my friend. You know I have to take the Rush, so there's our one and probably only similar pick here as we'll move into our final game on Stampede Text. Who you got? Rochester at New England. It's a Sunday affair from the casino. Callan Crawford will be back in the lineup for the Black Wolves. Evan, Nighthawks at the Black Wolves. Who you got?
It's a Sunday game. It's in New England. Callan Crawford's back. He's probably going to be a little pissed off. Which Rochester team are we going to get? Are we going to get the one from 2 weeks ago who almost pulled a couple upsets off? Or are we going to get the one that crashed and burned in the second half? I don't know if it matters. I'm going to take New England on this one. You just don't bet against New England on home on a Sunday.
Well, I'm going to bet against New England at home on a Sunday because I think that bubble is ready to burst here. I think that trend is ready to be bucked, Evan. So give me the Nighthawks at New England on Sunday afternoon. Recapping quickly, Evan, you got a 5-game lead on me here as we move into Week 16. Philly at Toronto, I got the Wings, you got the Rock. Seals at Calgary, I got the Seals, you got the Roughnecks. Warriors at Saskatchewan, we both took the Rush. Nighthawks at the Black Wolves. You took the Wolves, I took the Hawks here this week. And who you got? That was a big show that we just did right there. Big thanks to Steve Deep Fryer and PLPA General Counsel Jason Jaros. Hopefully we answered all, if not many, of your questions, and hopefully maybe cleared things up a little bit on how the process works, why it happened, what happened, all that sort of stuff. We did our best anyway, and we appreciate you tuning in. So thanks to Jason Jaros and Steve Fryer for coming on the show. Thanks to you, the listener, as always, for checking out Lacrosse Classified every single week right here on the Lacrosse All-Stars Podcast Network. Our lovely sponsors, of course, Extreme Threads, Associated Labels and Packaging, Pure Vital Labs, and Stampede Tack and Western Wear. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. That's the word I'm looking for. Subscribe to that podcast. Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes. We are everywhere. Follow us on social media. Evan is at Shemlax. I am at PXP for Sports, and the show is at Lax Class. For Evan Schemenauer, I've been Jake Elliott, and for the fastest game on 2 feet, I'm for the creator. Talk to you next time here on Extreme Threads, Lacrosse Classified, on the Lacrosse All-Stars Podcast Network.